We're in this sermon series called Season of Wonder. It's Advent. We have a candle of hope. We have a candle of peace. So I'm going to start by asking you the question, where's your peace? From where do you derive peace? Or do you have peace in your life? Or are there things that you feel or get the sense can steal your peace? We're going to start with this passage in Malachi that tells us, it's the prophetic voice of Malachi, that tells us that there's this promised Messiah that's coming. This Messiah who will bring peace, this Messiah to bring good news and redemption, healing of the nations. It's good news. Everybody needs good news once in a while, right? But he begins by saying this, but then he says, but who will be able to stand? Who can endure the day of his coming? Who can actually stand up when you receive this messenger? Have you ever received a message, or maybe you received a gift, a package, something that you might have held it, you might have looked at it, but you might not have wanted to open it? Have you ever received something you didn't want to open? Maybe you were unsure of its content. Maybe it was a court summons. Anybody get those? And you're like, nope, don't want to open that thing. Those type of things that we receive, we kind of look at it and go, I'm not sure that I really want that. It's a good thing, but I'm not sure I really want it. See, Malachi is telling us that there's this good thing that's coming, but who can stand? Who can endure it? Because it's going to be a challenging thing to actually encounter. In fact, he's talking about getting us ready or preparing us to encounter the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the Prince of Peace. In fact, he's talking about what the whole season of Advent is about preparing us. Preparing for this one who is to come that will redeem all of humanity. And every year we go through Advent, and it's similar to Lent in the fact that we're supposed to be doing things to prepare our hearts. Whether it's spending extra time in devotion or prayer, whether it's spending extra time in Bible study, worship, whatever it might be to prepare our hearts. So this thing that he's talking about, Malachi is saying, the good news is this Prince of Peace is coming. The good news is the Messiah is coming. The bad news is you stink and you're not ready for him. Bad news is it's time to get cleaned up. You got to take a shower. You got to get all gussied up and ready. In fact, you could put this in terms of thinking you're getting invited to a feast. You're getting invited to a wedding, and you can't go the way you are. You got to get cleaned up first, right? Well, then he goes on to say the shower, we'll provide the shower for you, but it's going to be like standing in front of a fire hose. Anybody ever tried to stand in front of a fire hose? I can't say I have, but I've seen videos of people trying. It doesn't work so well, does it? Because you get hit with that water, it just like smacks them, and they're pushed back or falling over. It's brutal. Fire hose kinds of cleansing. Well, actually, that's not the term that he uses. He talks about a refiner's fire. Anybody know what a refiner's fire is? Okay, it's to purify gold, purify silver. It's to purify a metal. In other words, you got to heat it up enough to melt it so that you can begin to remove the impurities. And to refine gold, you got to get the furnace up to like 1,000 degrees, over 1,000 degrees. Okay, this is like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego style here. You got to step into a furnace that literally would consume somebody before they even reach the furnace to actually be purified. And Malachi is saying he's going to be like a refiner's fire, getting you ready, getting you pure enough, holy enough, righteous enough to actually come into the presence of this Messiah. And then he goes on to talk about Fuller's soap. Now, I don't know about you, Fuller's soap, have you ever heard of Fuller's soap? Do you guys use Fuller's soap? I use Dove. I mean, what kind of soap do you guys use? Fuller's soap is not something you find on the shelf, is it? And yet, when you do some research, you find out that Fuller's soap would have been like using an essential oil. It would be like taking an extract from a plant, putting it in water. Actually, usually they would traditionally get the water to like a boiling kind of temperature, put their clothes in it, and then they would actually trample their clothes. They would mash them repeatedly. Some references say that they would use a bat to beat their clothing. literally to a point that that was how they would clean their clothing. Now, I don't know about you, but I've had to use one of those scrub boards. Mission trip for like 8 weeks, and we didn't have any other way to wash your clothes. So you wash your clothes on a scrub board. And you think to yourself, I remember looking at my clothes thinking, boy, I'm pretty proud of that. I got that really clean. I scrubbed really hard on that. But you can also look and see my clothing was clean, but it was definitely more worn after I scrubbed on it. Malachi is saying that the process of getting ready, with as dirty as we are sometimes, our process of getting ready to encounter the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords is sometimes brutal. It is difficult. It is a challenge. It's a vigorous process. But all of it's done to get us ready for this full encounter with the Messiah. This passage just brings us up to the tipping point so that we can enter into this time or this space with John the Baptist. So then we tip over into Luke, and this reading from Luke is actually Zechariah's song. Now, how many of you are familiar with Zechariah? A few of you remember Zechariah? Okay. Zechariah is this priest, this high priest. He's allowed to enter into the Holy of Holies, remember? In fact, they would enter into the Holy of Holies with a rope tied around their leg. Then in case God struck them dead, they could be pulled out. And so he's allowed in the one time a year that they're allowed in. So he walks into the Holy of Holies and begins and does the work of the high priest in that space during that time. And he encounters an angel that says, "You will have a son who will be John, and he will prepare the way for the Messiah." And remember, Zechariah was like, yeah, whatever. We're old. We can't have kids. It's not going to happen. Now, I don't know about you, but this is the kind of thing that I would get myself in trouble with. God would say, yes, this is going to happen. I'd say, whatever, God, whatever. Well, God took Zechariah, who said, yeah, whatever, and he said, you're going to be silent. You're mute. You cannot talk until your son is born. So he comes out not being able to speak until his son is born. So when his son is born, everyone asks, well, what's his name to be? And he writes on a piece of paper, his name is John. And they say, you can't name him John. Nobody else in your family is named John. You have to do it the same way everybody else has done it all the rest of their, right? Can't make any changes. And as soon as he's done writing the name, as soon as they say you can't name him John, his mouth is opened and he's able to speak. And he begins to speak in this poetic, this song, if you will, this voice of prophecy that proclaims John's role and the coming Messiah. In fact, this word that we read from Luke today is exactly that. It's Zechariah's song. Zechariah's song is shortly after Mary's song in Luke chapter 1. And I don't think I can say it any better than this. McLaren has an exposition where he writes out his understanding of this particular text, and he says it this way. He says, as the dawn is ushered in by notes of birds singing, so is the rising of the sun of righteousness as it was heralded by his song. Mary and Zechariah brought their praises and welcome to the unborn Christ. The angels hovered with heavenly music over his cradle, and Simeon took the child in his arms and blessed it. The human members of this choir may be regarded as the last of the psalmists and the prophets and the first of Christian singers. The song of Zechariah is steeped in Old Testament allusion and redolent of the ancient spirit, but it transcends all of that. The song soars above everything that has come before, and it pierces to the very heart of Christ's work. The day spring from on high hath visited us to give light to those that sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, to guide our feet into the way of peace. Nothing deeper, nothing wider, nothing truer about the mission and issue of Christ's coming could be spoken. Think about that for just a moment. Think about that for just a moment. Who is this day spring or this sunrise? Who is it that has come? It's Jesus Christ. Why did he come? To give light in the darkness, to guide our feet in a way of peace. So let me ask again. How do you find peace? Where is your peace? Or maybe I should ask, what do you allow to steal your peace? In this particular season, it can be pretty easy, can't it? I had one parishioner this morning actually just tell me, I can't find any peace. It's like I live on Gingerbread Lane and I can't even get in my own driveway. I mean, think about it. Driving it can steal your peace. Going anywhere, doing anything in this season can steal your peace. You know, the interesting thing to me is in this passage, the combination of things that are included in there. Malachi and Luke. My question is this. Can you find peace sitting on a shelf? Is it something you can just pull off? Can you find peace in a cup of coffee? Some of us might say, well, yeah, a cup of coffee and sitting on my porch and watching that beautiful sunrise or sunset. I might find peace in that. Or some of you might have this image of peace sitting on a beach somewhere, especially in the cold weather right now. You're thinking, oh, I would love a beach. But Scripture tells us that peace is not found in a circumstance. Peace is not found in situation. It's not found in relationship. It's not found in things. It's not something you can purchase. Peace is something that is beyond and above all of that. The truth is, it tells us that it may require going through a vigorous or a difficult, a brutal situation to actually find peace. We may experience very, very difficult circumstances before we recognize peace. There was a book that my son loved growing up. I don't know if any of the rest of you had this one or not. It was Going on a Bear Hunt. Anybody know that one? Oh, yeah. Going on a bear hunt. Gonna catch a big one. What a beautiful day. We're not scared. Oh, no. Grass. Long, wavy grass. We can't go over it. We can't go under it. We got to go through it. And over, this kid who's going on a bear hunt encounters difficulty or trial or something that feels like you can't get through it and you can't go over it, you can't go under it, but you got to go through it. And you think to yourself, what are the circumstances in my life that I got to go through that right now are stealing my peace? What are the circumstances that I'm encountering right now that are stealing my joy? This passage tells me that there are times in life, in fact, life itself sometimes means that we've got to be refined, we've got to be purified, cleansed, beaten. We've got to be purified so that we can truly encounter the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, and the Prince of Peace. Truth is, sometimes it's on the other side of those circumstances that we actually encounter or that we recognize the light that God has been shining down the whole time. Literally, this poetic language that we find in Luke, it's this language in this passage that in the Hebrew is just beautiful prophecy and song. McLaren again explains it like this. He says, the picture that arises before us in this passage is that there is a group of travelers who are benighted or overnight stuck somewhere, bewildered, huddled together in the dark, afraid to move for fear of pitfalls, precipices, and wild beasts. So sighing for the day and compelled to be inactive until it comes. That is the picture of humanity apart from Jesus Christ. A darkness so intense, so tragic, that it is, as it were, the very shadow of the ultimate and essential darkness, which is death. And in it, men are sitting torpid or languid, unable to find their way and afraid to move. Have you ever found yourself in a circumstance where you're just literally like scared stiff? Or petrified, or your peace is stolen in such a way that you just can't get out of it? That's the kind of imagery that Zechariah is proclaiming in his prophetic voice. That's the kind of imagery that Zechariah is laying out, that literally he's saying that this is the kind of circumstance that humanity is in until the Prince of Peace appears. As I thought about it more and more, I thought to myself, of all the emotions, of all of those feelings that we can experience, peace, I think peace can be one of the most elusive feelings, can't it? Peace can be one of those things that just feels like it's stolen from us. In fact, too often if we take our time thinking about our past steals our peace. Or if we think about peace coming in the future, we think that it's just out of reach. We can never quite get there. Or our present feels like there's just this looming cloud that keeps it hidden in darkness. The present darkness of life that prevents our true experience of peace. And yet it's the one thing that humanity needs the most. Peace is like a door. It's like we've got to enter into that space, that relationship with God before we truly experience the peace that only God Almighty can give to us in Jesus Christ. I think peace is something we need to talk about more. Because over and over I hear people telling me that there are things that are stealing their peace. In fact, January, I'm going to tell you, we're going to come back to this topic of peace. We're going to dig into a book called The Anatomy of Peace. We're going to talk about how our thinking, how our history, how our certain circumstances can steal our peace. And we're going to talk about how we can transition from having hearts that are at war with circumstance to having hearts that are at peace in whatever our circumstance is. Today, I want to simply challenge you with this. I want to challenge you to think just a little bit deeper. I want you to honestly ask yourself the question, what is it that is stealing my peace? What do I allow to steal my peace? And then I want to invite you into this space we call Advent. I want to invite you to make space for Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace. To trust that no matter what it is that you're navigating or trying to get through in life, that Jesus is with you and Jesus is the one that will grant you peace. That will be the light to your feet. That will guide your path in peace, no matter what it is. Today, whatever it is that's stealing your peace, give that to God and say, God, be my peace in the midst of this storm. Would you pray?